Hey everyone, so today I would like to show off one of the new features of Aries Framework JavaScript, and that is the multi-tenant module. So the first thing you need to do if you want to use the multi-tenant module is you need to install it as a separate plugin to Aries Framework JavaScript. So we can do this by running yarn add or npm install, and then we can do add Aries Framework. All packages from AFJ that are part of the core of their extensions that are maintained by us are under the Aries Framework scope. And now we want to install the tenants module. We can add the package. It will resolve it. And once we've installed it, we can now import it from the tenants module. So I'm going to import from the Aries Framework tenants module. And in here, you can see there's multiple things exported. And the one we're interested in today is the tenants module. So part of the Aries Framework JavaScript 0.3.0 release is the plugin system. I'll make a separate video on that, but how you use it is that you have a modules key and you can register your custom modules here, and the tenants module is one of those. So if I now add the tenants module here, we have an initialized agent. So I set up a basic agent with the dependencies, a very simple configuration, and now the tenants module. And if I now on the agent, we have a new modules key, and under the modules key are all my custom registered modules. In this case, I've registered the tenants module, and on the tenant module, there's 5 methods exposed. We can create a tenant, we can delete a tenant, we can get a tenant by ID, and there's 2 to execute actions as part of a tenant. So we have to get tenant agent, and that will give you an agent instance for the specific tenant. And it's basically like we have the agent here. So we have the root agent now. And for a specific tenant, we can get a sub agent. Another way is that we have the with tenant agent method, and this handles the closing of the session and error handling for you, and is generally a safer way to do it, because whenever you open a tenant agent, it also needs to be closed at some point, because otherwise if you keep opening sessions for tenants, then that can lead to overuses of resources and is generally a memory leak. So with this method, we try to handle it for you, that when this method call is over, we automatically close the session. So before I can run something as a tenant, I first need to create it. And I can do that using the agent, modules, tenants, create tenant. There's not a lot of options at the moment, but for the config, I now need to pass a label. So let's say I want to create a tenant for Alice. I can assign it to a variable. We can do Alice tenant, and we create a tenant with the label of Alice. The tenant is now created. And if we then want to use it, we can call the with tenant agent method. In it, we need to pass a tenant ID, which we can get from the Alice tenant.id. And as a second method, we need to pass a callback. And in this case, it's the tenant agent. And it's an asynchronous method. And in here, we can use the tenant agent however we like. So on the tenant agent, I can, for example, do OOB, create invitation. And now we create a out-of-band invitation. We get back the out-of-band record, and I can console.log the OOB record dot out-of-band invitation, and we can parse it to JSON. Now, if I were to run this code, so I open the terminal editor again, and I run yarn start, it will run the following code. And as you see, it has now printed the DITCOM out-of-band invitation here. And this is contains the label Alice and is only available to the Alice tenant. So if I were to create another tenant, it wouldn't have access to this out-of-band invitation. It's completely a separate wallet, and the wallets are managed through the base agent. So that's the with tenant agent, and the session is automatically closed now. So if you were to build a REST wrapper, with multi-tenancy, I can always advise to use this method because it just makes it simpler. If you have a use case where you want to use the more custom, you can do the get tenant agent method. You still pass the tenant ID, so we can do alice tenant.id. And now I have the tenant agent in here. We can remove this other code, or let's run the same example. So we create the same out-of-band invitation, and we console.log it afterwards. But what we need to do now is we're done with the tenant agent, and I need to do tenant agent dot end session, and by this I end the session. And this is the same as the with tenant agent, but we need to do more error handling here because, for example, if this method would throw, we wouldn't call this method and the session wouldn't be ended. And we can't know internally when a session is ended. So that's why this requires a bit more manual setup. But if I were to run this same method, you can see we have an out-of-band invitation for the label of Alice. So two approaches to do the same thing with different trade-offs. So that's the basics of using the tenants module in Aries Framework JavaScript. Once you've created the tenant and got the tenant agent, you have exactly the same agent as you would have in a single tenant agent. So there doesn't change a lot in how you use the agent. I hope it was helpful, and I will post more videos soon on different topics from the Aries Framework JavaScript 0.3.0 release. Thank you.